The internet didn't just gasp, it erupted. This time, the rumor wasn't messy, it was atomic. Pierre, already under relentless scrutiny, suddenly found himself in the eye of a new storm after whispers claimed he was allegedly spotted with another man. Not idle gossip, not casual chatter, a fleeting moment, a sighting, a story that spread so fast it seemed orchestrated. And just when everyone thought it couldn't escalate further, Teyana Taylor's name got dragged back into the chaos, with claims she knew far more than she ever revealed, and that what she'd been holding back could change everything. Timelines went haywire, screenshots surfaced, deleted posts reappeared, and old interviews were dissected under a new lens. Fans questioned everything they thought they knew about Aaron, the breakup, and the silence that followed. The most dangerous element? Timing. This rumor didn't just appear randomly. It emerged exactly when people were already scrutinizing his motives, his rise, and what truly happened behind closed doors with Teyana. That coincidence alone sent speculation into overdrive. Then the narrative darkened. Claims circulated that Teyana wasn't blindsided, that she was protecting him, staying silent not from heartbreak, but from restraint. Now with this rumor unleashed, fans are asking the question that reshapes the whole story. Was the breakup about betrayal, or was it the truth finally leaking? Because if this exposure is real, or even remotely believable, it doesn't just flip the narrative, it detonates it. And once the internet catches a whiff of a secret, it doesn't stop until every detail is dragged into the light. The first shockwave didn't come from proof, it came from panic. One fleeting sighting became wildfire before sunrise, and suddenly Pierre's name was everywhere, for reasons that had nothing to do with acting, talent, or career momentum. The wording was incendiary, the framing reckless, and the internet did exactly what it always does when curiosity meets ambiguity. It filled in the blanks at lightning speed. Caught with another man wasn't a question, it was treated like a verdict. Once that phrasing hit timelines, there was no stopping it. What made this moment truly volatile wasn't just the rumor itself, it was the timing. Aaron was already under scrutiny. His breakup with Teyana Taylor had never settled into a clean narrative. Fans were still debating motives, timing, and silence. So when this new claim surfaced, it didn't land in a vacuum, it landed on dry kindling soaked in gasoline. Screenshots circulated immediately, allegedly from private accounts, hinting at a public encounter. It wasn't meant to be seen. No clear faces, no context, just enough hints to light the wildfire of speculation. And let's be real, speculation is the internet's favorite pastime. Within hours, the story twisted and turned. Some painted it as betrayal, others as secrecy. A few went even further, recklessly assigning identities and motives like it was a spectator sport. That escalation? Dangerous. Even fans who had criticized Pierre's recent moves started warning that the chatter was crossing lines. But warnings vanish when virality takes the wheel. TikTok stitched together clips of Aaron talking about privacy, identity, and focus, turning neutral statements into ominous foreshadowing. Old interviews were slowed, zoomed, dissected like confessions. Context collapsed under the weight of interpretation. Then Teyana Taylor's name got dragged back in, brutally, not politely. Suddenly, it wasn't just about Aaron anymore, it was about what Teyana supposedly knew. Claims surfaced that she was protecting him, that her silence wasn't heartbreak but discipline, that the breakup wasn't about ambition or access but about some secret she refused to expose publicly. None of it came from her. None of it was confirmed. But once the idea caught fire, the internet treated it as gospel. She stayed quiet for a reason. She covered for him. That's why she didn't speak. The assumptions stacked so fast they became a full-blown narrative before anyone could intervene. Alleged insiders poured gasoline on the fire. Anonymous posts hinted at tension long before the breakup. Tension rooted in secrecy and pressure. No specifics, just implication. And implication is potent because it invites the audience to play detective, connecting dots that might not even exist. Some argued the rumor explained everything. Others said it explained nothing, revealing how ruthless the internet can be when it demands answers it isn't owed. Aaron's silence became excruciating to watch. No denial, no clarification, no this is false. To some, it was restraint, to others, confirmation. The internet doesn't handle ambiguity well, especially when it feels entitled to transparency. Fans demanded statements. Critics demanded accountability. Supporters begged people to stop speculating. None of it mattered to the machine, Because the machine doesn't care about fairness. It thrives on engagement. The most unsettling part? How fast the conversation drifted from facts entirely. It stopped being about what happened and became about what it meant. Identity was debated like public property. Loyalty was debated like a signed contract. Teyana's silence was dissected like a confession. The story gained a life of its own, untethered from reality, driven purely by emotion and projection. Once that happens, damage is inevitable. By the end of this first phase, the original rumor barely mattered. It had already done its job. Pierre wasn't being discussed as a rising star under scrutiny anymore. He had become a mystery people felt entitled to solve. Teyana Taylor wasn't just an ex. She was framed as the keeper of secrets. The internet, intoxicated by speculation, leaned in for more, convinced the truth was about to spill. Consent be damned. Because once curiosity turns invasive, it doesn't stop at rumor. It demands exposure. The second shockwave didn't travel through screenshots or sightings. It traveled through interpretation, which made it far more dangerous. By the time the rumor had completed its first circuit online, it didn't matter what anyone actually saw or didn't see. The story had shifted from events to perceptions, and once belief takes over, facts become optional. Pierre's name was now tied to a narrative so volatile that every old quote, every past silence, every carefully chosen word was dissected like evidence from a sealed vault. What pushed the chaos into overdrive was how the rumor evolved. It stopped being framed as a single incident and started being framed as a pattern. Anonymous accounts claimed this wasn't new, that whispers had existed long before the breakup, that people had always suspected something deeper was quietly managed. No names, no timelines, just implication stacked upon implication. And because Aaron had always been private, reserved, and controlled in public, that privacy was twisted into secrecy. The internet has never handled nuance well, and this moment was no exception. Teyana Taylor's silence became the loudest part of the story. Fans who once praised her restraint now weaponized it. She protected him. She covered. She didn't want to out him. Those statements spread like wildfire despite having no confirmation and no consent. Even skeptics admitted it was chilling. The internet wasn't curious anymore. It was entitled. Entitled to explanations. Entitled to identity. Entitled to a story never offered. Once entitlement sets in, boundaries vanish. Insiders, or those claiming to be, escalated the narrative with carefully vague language. There were things she couldn't discuss. The breakup wasn't simple. She chose dignity over exposure. Each phrase fed the same conclusion without saying it outright. It was a masterclass in suggestion, and the internet filled in the blanks. TikTok creators framed videos as connecting dots, but the dots were imagined. Twitter threads used words like truth and finally make sense, despite nothing being revealed. Speculation became consensus at terrifying speed. The most disturbing shift? People stopped discussing Aaron's actions and started dissecting his identity as if it were public property. That line, once crossed, couldn't be uncrossed. Some pushed back, calling it reckless and invasive. Others dismissed it, claiming public figures invite scrutiny. That argument flattened everything: privacy, consent, humanity, into content. And in that flattening, the story became less about Pierre and more about how the internet devours ambiguity when bored and hungry. Meanwhile, Aaron stayed silent. No denial, no clarification, no acknowledgement. To supporters, that silence was dignity. To critics, confirmation. To the algorithm, fuel. Every hour without a statement made the rumor feel more real, more embedded. Fans began demanding that Teyana speak, framing her as the gatekeeper of truth. That pressure was grotesque. She hadn't hinted, exposed, or invited any of this. Yet the internet decided she owed it. And when she didn't deliver, people treated that as proof all over again. The narrative warped further, retroactively reframing the breakup. What was once ambition became concealment. What was once distance became deception. Every supposedly neutral moment was now twisted into foreshadowing. Old interviews where Pierre spoke about guarding his private life were replayed with ominous captions. This hits different now. He told us without telling us. It didn't matter that his statements were generic, thoughtful, or responsible. The new narrative treated them as clues. This was the moment the story morphed from gossip into harmful mythology. Not because anyone had confirmed anything, but because the internet decided that lack of confirmation was part of the plot. Even voices urging restraint struggled to break through. Once speculation frames itself as justice or revelation, it becomes self-righteous, and self-righteous stories never slow down, they escalate. By the end of the second phase, the original rumor had almost vanished beneath the weight of its supposed implications. Aaron wasn't merely being watched anymore, he was being decoded. Teyana Taylor wasn't just an ex, she was being treated like a witness who refused to testify. And the internet, convinced it was on the verge of truth, leaned in harder, ignoring the most crucial fact: no one had actually exposed anything. That's what made the next phase so dangerous. Once a story reaches this point, it no longer waits for evidence, it waits for collapse. By the time the third wave hit, the story had crossed a line it could never uncross. Not because of proof, not because of confirmation, but because the internet had abandoned all restraint. What began as a reckless rumor had metastasized into a demand for disclosure, aimed at the most personal thing a person owns: their identity. The frenzy was no longer about what anyone saw, it was about what people felt entitled to know. That shift changed everything. Speculation hardened into expectation. Comment sections stopped asking questions and started issuing ultimatums. Say something. Clear it up. We deserve the truth. The word deserve was chilling, as if curiosity had become ownership, and as if Pierre's silence was an insult rather than a boundary. Supporters tried to slow it down, reminding people that rumors aren't revelations and that no one owes the public explanations about their private life. Those voices were drowned out. The louder narrative insisted silence was strategic, quiet meant hiding, and refusal to speak was the final clue in a puzzle the internet had already solved. Teyana Taylor's name remained unfairly wedged into the discourse. People treated her like a lever. Pull it, and the truth would fall out. They scrutinized her old lyrics, past interviews, even body language in unrelated clips, searching for signals she never sent. Her decision to remain silent was reframed as exposure by absence. She was protecting him, too classy to say it, refusing to out him. None of these claims came from her, none respected her agency, but repetition gave them power. And repetition is exactly how the internet manufactures certainty without facts. Insiders, or accounts performing as insiders, escalated again, now using moral language. They spoke of truths people weren't ready for, and stories that couldn't be told without causing harm. That phrasing did enormous damage, implying a truth already known, already agreed upon, merely withheld for ethical reasons. That implication turned speculation darker, suggesting secrecy where there might only have been privacy, and privacy in the hands of a bored audience becomes suspicious by default. Aaron's continued silence became the axis around which everything spun. Every hour without a statement made the story feel heavier. Fans who once defended his right to privacy began wavering, not because new evidence emerged, but because the pressure was relentless. The internet does not handle unresolved narratives well. It fills gaps aggressively, confuses ambiguity with dishonesty, and once the confusion sets in, restraint is labeled guilt. What made this phase especially dangerous was how quickly invasive behavior became normalized. People debated identity like it was a plot twist. They speculated about relationships as if they were public contracts. They talked about exposure like it was inevitable, even deserved. Very few paused to ask the most important question: what if there was nothing to expose at all? What if the entire frenzy was built on assumptions stacked on assumptions, fueled by the thrill of crossing lines rather than uncovering truth? The cultural impact widened fast. Commentators began using the situation as a talking point in larger debates about masculinity, Hollywood, secrecy, and image control, again, without confirmation. Pierre stopped being a person in those conversations and became a symbol, a placeholder for whatever argument someone wanted to push. That kind of abstraction is brutal, because once someone becomes symbolic, their real life stops mattering. They get flattened into narrative utility. Teyana Taylor, meanwhile, remained silent, and that silence began to look less like mystery and more like self-protection. So-called insiders claimed she wanted no part in speculation that could damage someone irreversibly, regardless of how their relationship ended. That framing, accurate or not, cast her not as a whistleblower, but as someone refusing to join a spectacle that had gone too far. Ironically, that restraint only increased the pressure, because the internet hates nothing more than a boundary it can't cross. As days passed, the energy shifted from frenzy to fixation. The outrage faded, but the assumptions stayed. People stopped posting non-stop and started waiting for a denial they could dissect, a clarification they could twist, a slip, a photo, a single line in an interview. The story no longer needed fuel, it had momentum, and momentum is how rumors outlive their origins. What got completely lost was the simplest truth: nothing had been proven, nothing confirmed, and nothing exposed by anyone involved. Yet reputations had already shifted. Ethical lines had already been crossed. The damage, emotional, professional, human, was already done. That's the part the internet never owns. It treats fallout like an acceptable cost of entertainment. By the time this third phase settled, the narrative wasn't loud anymore, it was embedded. People spoke about it like it was understood, even though understanding never existed. Pierre's privacy was no longer questioned, it was challenged. Teyana Taylor's silence was no longer respected, it was interpreted. And the internet, having crossed from curiosity into entitlement, moved on without ever reckoning with how far it went. The most sobering realization wasn't about the rumor itself, but how easily speculation becomes mythology, and how fast mythology turns into what everyone knows. No confirmation was needed. No consent was considered. The story didn't require truth, only attention. And that's how it ended, not with exposure or revelation, but with a lesson the internet refuses to learn. When boundaries are ignored long enough, silence stops being mysterious and becomes necessary. If you're still here, pause for a second, because this is where stories like this either get understood or completely distorted. What you just watched wasn't a reveal. It was a case study in how fast rumor becomes truth when the internet decides it's owed answers. Once that line is crossed, the damage can't be undone. Reputations shift, narratives harden, silence gets rewritten as guilt, and privacy gets framed as deception. That's exactly why staying engaged matters. Like this video because attention decides whether conversations evolve responsibly or collapse into reckless assumptions. Comment, because how this story moves forward depends on whether people challenge the narrative or just consume it. And subscribe, not for gossip, but for context. The next chapter won't announce itself politely, and whether it's denial, clarification, quiet distance, or silence that speaks louder than words, you'll want to see it happen before the internet tells you what it means. Missing the next update isn't about missing drama, it's about missing understanding. These stories don't end cleanly, they linger, resurface, and get rewritten. Stay here, watch closely, question loudly, and refuse to let speculation replace reality.